I've been director of the archives for 5 years now, and during the course of that time, everybody from janitors and just working people at the Capitol complex to Lynn Cheney, the wife of the Vice President of the United States, has talked to Dr. Temple about and approached him with questions, and again, he treats them all the same. It's just phenomenal what a good public servant he is and what a good author he is. Dr. Batinsky talked about my dissertation. For the last 5 years, I've gotten nothing but support and encouragement and help from Dr. Temple, and I appreciate that on a very personal level. The best quote I think I've seen on Dr. Temple, you're going to hear a great talk from him about Lincoln, and the theme here is Lincoln, but I think the best quote I saw that I've ever seen on Dr. Temple, and there's many to pick, but the one is, if you're going to do research, if you're going to study Lincoln, you have to go through Dr. Temple first. And I just love that quote. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wayne C. Temple.
It's always a great pleasure to be on the campus of the oldest college in the state of Illinois. Yeah. And you honored me a number of years ago when I gave a university lecture in your fine, beautiful chapel. And the boys of Phi Alpha decided that they would make me an honorary member, in which I am very grateful. You know why? Because on the 4th of February in 1859, they made Abraham Lincoln an honorary member. So I am very pleased to be a honorary fraternity brother of Abraham Lincoln. Not only did they do that, but I encouraged and persuaded Lloyd Ostendorf, the great artist, to draw in oil Lincoln speaking here at Illinois College for the boys of Phi Alpha. Do you have any Phi Alpha brothers here? Ah, yes. Well, I should put you on notice that there are going to be world-class Lincoln people here on campus, and you might steal the march on your rival fraternity and get them to sign your charter too. Dr. Harold Holzer will be here from New York, and Dr. Michael Burlingame, both laureates of the Lincoln Academy this year. Well, anyhow, I'd like to speak about a tomb that was never used. And when Abraham Lincoln was killed and died on the 15th of April in '65, his wife was sort of non-compos mentis in the White House, and about the only people she would talk to was Secretary of War Stanton, and also the personal physician they had known in Springfield that happened to be in Washington with him that time, Dr. Anson G. Henry. And by the 17th of April, she had finally communicated to one of those two people that she desired for her husband to be buried in Springfield, Illinois. And she said that he wanted a nice, quiet place, and she thought Oak Ridge Cemetery would be just wonderful for that occasion. By the way, she stayed in the White House until the 22nd of May before she left on her way not back to Springfield, but to Chicago, Illinois. Well, Springfield founding fathers and later successors have never been very timid about expressing their desire for tourism, right? They immediately got word of the president's demise, and when they learned that Mrs. Lincoln on the 17th had agreed that he should be buried in Springfield, they began nosing around for a suitable place, close to the center of town, of course, for tourism. And by the 18th of April, the local newspaper, the Journal, said that the Mather property would be a prime location, just prime. And the widow of Colonel Thomas Mather owned this entire square. It ran from Monroe Street almost to Jackson Street, and from 2nd Street over to a small strip of ground where Spring Street is today. A total of 5.5 acres. And there was a slight hill there, and on that property to the north was her great mansion. And the town thought that would be the prime place. So immediately they put together a committee, and I'll read the names so I don't forget to tell you. This is the city committee for the handling of the burial of Lincoln, or the temporary ceremonies. It was Jacob Bunn, been Lincoln's banker, Nicholas Henry Ridgely, a banker, Mayor Thomas James Dennis, carpenter and a builder, and Jared Pinkney Irwin, a Springfield mechanic and brick contractor, had laid the foundation for the old State House in Springfield. And the most important thing was he agreed to erect a temporary tomb free of charge. Well, they immediately began working on this tomb day and night. And Mrs. Lincoln got word of that. In her condition, somebody must have told her, probably Secretary Stanton. He kept very close touch with what was going on in Springfield. And he said several times, and finally sent a telegram to John Todd Stewart, Mary Lincoln's cousin, saying that she would not allow him to be buried on the Mather property. He must either be buried in Springfield at Oak Ridge, or she would take the body back to Washington, D.C., because officials there had offered to allow her to bury her murdered husband in the crypt under the current Capitol in Washington, which they had prepared for George Washington. But Washington's family decided they would like to inter him on his estate at Mount Vernon. So the committee immediately, the local committee with Jacob Bunn, immediately ceased construction on that structure. But they already had built it except for a few little fancy touches. And so they bowed out of the picture. However, on the 24th of April, the National Lincoln Monument Association was formed. And their project was to be in charge of building a huge, heroic tomb for the president. And of course, they still had in their mind the Mather property. The funeral train came into Springfield on the 3rd of May, and they had several viewings, of course, for over 24 hours, and finally, on May the 4th, they had a great entourage that escorted the casket to Oak Ridge Cemetery, as Mary Lincoln wanted, and they placed the body in the public receiving vault, which is below the brow of the hill there where you see today where the tomb stands.